Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Utah Film Pod. My name is Josh Terry. I am back here with Dani Hatch and the return of Mark LaRocco after an episode off. How'd you enjoy your time off, Mark? You do anything fun?
Well, I did end up seeing Jurassic World.
Good. Well, we hope that you hated it as much as we did. That's not fair.
Otherwise, you can't come back.
I don't think I did. I don't think I did hate it as much as you guys.
I got my microphone up
we
here.
Are definitely. How about what did you think? Let's just go to that straight. What did you think, Mark?
Well, I thought it had a lot of potential that it just didn't quite fulfill. I guess my 30-second review is it didn't live up to what it could have been, because to me there's so many interesting kind of ethical questions about if we go through de-extinction, like bringing back dinosaurs, then what is our responsibility toward them? And at the beginning of the movie, it does start to, it kind of hints at that.
Right. And
then it just kind of turns into a normal action, let's get away from the dinosaurs type of movie, for most of the movie. Because I had known from the previews and from the end of Fallen Kingdom that dinosaurs were just now loose all over the world. So I was expecting to see stories of maybe how different people were dealing with them or living with them or battling them in different areas of the world. But again, the majority of the movie just sort of focuses on the main characters plus the half dozen new supporting characters and how they deal with them. So,
the franchise has had a nasty habit of introducing that threat and kind of dangling it in front of us movie after movie and never really following through. Because the things that you're saying are the same exact things that Dani and I were complaining about, right? It was a missed opportunity. It wasn't just a bad movie. It was setting you up to think this could be something really interesting and cool, and then just kind of defaulting back to let's kind of get everybody in the same location, and it's kind of confined.
Well, it's kind of funny. I was actually kind of cynical about it because I'm like, man, this is going to be a train wreck. I cannot wait to see the chaos that comes from this premise. And they didn't even follow through on that.
You're supposed to be the young, optimistic one.
No, dude.
Come on, Dani. We're counting on you.
No, we're all cynical. The world's over.
You're pretty young for an old cynic. For me, I thought the action pieces, I did think they were great. They did a good job with them. I mean, mostly it maybe wasn't as tense or scary as it could have been, but the effects were awesome. And I got to see it in IMAX theater, so I'm sure that helped, going and seeing it at the IMAX in Centerville. But I
think that would be better than watching it on your phone.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was worth
beyond that.
I think I did say in my review that if you're gonna see this movie, see it in theater to enjoy the lighting, the sound,
exactly.
There were a lot of good technical aspects to it.
Right. And I'm glad I went too, because it was kind of a Father's Day present. I took my dad to it on Saturday night, and he and I went to the original in 1993. So it's kind of like this full circle moment to be able to see it again. And I think he liked it better than I did. I don't have really, really major complaints about it, maybe like you guys did. The other problem I have with it is I felt like it was underwritten. There are certain scenes where the characters are just saying things that any just average or below average screenwriter would have them say in the moment without an interesting, snappy one-liner or something interesting that would further develop the character. And I was telling Josh, there are a few scenes where it almost ends with the character just staring at the camera, and there's a few seconds of awkward pauses, like a pause where you're just waiting for something to be said, and then it goes to the next thing. It just rushes to the next chase scene. It was just weird. There were a few moments like that where I'm like, wow, they really could have punched that up with kind of a funny line, even to break the tension. Or there were a few from Dr. Malcolm. He has a funny line like, "Why are you skulking around?" He has a few little things that he says that are like Dr. Malcolm type phrases. But everybody else there's not.
Well, I'm sure he was improvising on the set. We can't give the screenwriters.
I actually wonder about
Jeff
that.
Goldblum.
I do. I wonder if Jeff Goldblum came up with some of that.
Yeah,
because he's just such
he
a
looks
weird.
at the script. I'm not saying that garbage. I know my character's worth.
I've heard him interviewed in real life, and he's a little different. He's a little bit of an odd.
Oh yeah, no, he's.
And then his character's that way.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it yet, he does a series. I guess this is a couple of years old now, and maybe I'm just kind of late to the party as usual. But I started watching a documentary series on Disney Plus, The World According to Jeff Goldblum. These are those little half-hour episodes. So yeah, the first one is sneakers, and then he'll do like swimming pools and makeup, and he'll just kind of take one subject and just Jeff Goldblum it to death.
And it's precious.
Yeah. So maybe to kind of twist the conversation into a positive direction.
Yeah,
I would definitely recommend that.
Just follow Jeff Goldblum.
Well, real quick, let me just say one more thing, because you mentioned the TV series from Jeff Goldblum. When you hear the premise of Jurassic World, which is finally, after 6 movies, counting the first trilogy, the dinosaurs have just basically escaped and are all over the world. It would almost be more interesting than what we were given in Jurassic World Dominion to have like a TV series of different maybe vignettes of people dealing with dinosaurs around the world.
It could be the opening and the ending were so good. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I love the opening and the ending. Even just the beautiful shots of dinosaurs mingling with like animals, like the Triceratops with the elephants, with the silhouette, and maybe they're on the African savanna.
What I would love? What I would love is if they had a way, and I don't know if you could just CGI the crap out of this, but if you could take existing TV shows and just integrate dinosaurs into old episodes. So like you got an old episode of Three's Company, and and John Ritter, and they're all just and then just like some raptor just kind of comes bounding through the kitchen while they're having a conversation and smashes through the door, or it's like the Brady Bunch are out playing in the backyard, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex eats Jan.
No,
that's
the best part.
I would watch that show.
I think that's the best part of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, like when they do like the little TV things, and like they end up grabbing the chocolate bar, and it's like the monolith from Space Odyssey, and it's like this chocolate bar. I don't know, it's really fun seeing all those kind of references, right? Like
See,
that'd be fun.
I had a bunch of ideas just come to my mind when I was thinking of, because you could have like one where maybe almost an ET like movie where there's a small dinosaur discovered by a young child, and how does he bring it into his his family's life, and you could even have them just different tonally. You could have different episodes. For example, have you heard of like Sense and Sensibility and Sea Snakes, or Pride and Prejudice and Zombies?
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah.
You could do like Romeo and Juliet and dinosaurs, or like a love story where it's actually a legitimate love story, but then there's dinosaurs incorporated in it. It could be kind of a funny slash.
Or what if say Blue the Raptor was so traumatized over losing its child that it imagined itself in other TV shows from the past, and maybe walked us through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. And
Blue
then
Vision.
Gradually we realize that it's all in his head, and he's projecting it, and he's manipulating. Yeah. Just an idea, just a thought.
Hey, Disney Plus.
Put it out there.
No. They've ruined enough things. No, and it's funny, Mark, you made a comment where it's like, I'm getting all these ideas. I'm like, that's been the thing that's been frustrating me a lot most recently with like Obi-Wan. Because like they're like the diehard fans who are like, oh my goodness, this is great. But even those guys are saying like, oh man, I thought they were going to do this. Or I thought, like, we're all writing better stories in our heads just generally. And I don't know if it's just like our own personal bias where it's like, we're not seeing what we want to see. Mm-hmm. But it's just like, so I don't know if it's the viewer's fault or the creator's fault for not those expectations, or for us to have those expectations in the first place that will just never be met. But like,
I think part of it is
on my mind.
Part of it is they give the fans what they want, and if you look at the scores, they're doing like the fan score is better than the critic score, and maybe they feel like with such a huge franchise, it's just too risky for them to just get too far away from people.
No, and I think that's one of the big problems is the financial risk. And that's one of the reasons we see people keep going back to the same franchises over and over, is that there's a guarantee that, okay, well, if we're working in this known intellectual property, we're going to at least have a certain degree of interest. That first weekend will at least turn around a certain amount of money. Whereas you put something out there that nobody's ever heard of, and hey, maybe it's something big, maybe it's completely forgotten, and And I think that we're just kind of stuck with that approach, because as with all the millions upon millions of dollars that are going into this stuff, I think the suits are unwilling to take any more risk than they need to, unfortunately. So our ideas will just always be better and never see fruition. But well, hey, let's move on from we've been pounding on Dominion plenty. We need to give our own audience something new to digest. Would that be a pun? Because dinosaurs eat people, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Anyway, so we got some fun stuff coming up. We do have some new content to talk about. We got a brand new local movie we're going to talk about. We have a new biopic that's coming out this weekend that we're excited to dig into. And then we'll kind of see where things go. But Dani, we got a local movie. So this is kind of a news item, because usually we talk about the local films in kind of a news context. Mm-hmm. But we also have a local film news item that you can go watch in a theater, right?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And this is one I actually got to see. And I feel like every time I look up these news items, it feels like, you know, the local projects are actually so far away, because, you know, it's so easy to access the mainstream items, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I got to see this one. This is called Cryo. Cryo meaning cryo sleep. And so, yeah, like Josh was saying, this is locally made. It was filmed in Provo by Utah filmmaker. It's Barrett Bergen, I think. Which, by the way, his production name I thought was hilarious. It's Berg Indie, like indie films, but like Bergen. I thought it was clever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, you know, kind of a clever guy, and you can see that in the film. But this is a sci-fi where 5 scientists wake up from cryo sleep, and they don't have their memories. Some snippets, things kind of come piece by piece, but they're exploring this underground facility, trying to figure out, like, what were they doing, what happened, who they are. And it just kind of starts to seem as, you know, things are brought to light that some people aren't as they seem. Pretty early on, we start seeing, like, some pools of blood. So it's like, you know, I think someone was murdered here. And so, you know, just all these little pieces coming together. The mystery of it is super fun. And I don't want to give too much away, because it really
sounds like
is,
kind of the fun of this is the twists and turns of the plot.
Oh, absolutely. Right? That ending was so satisfying. Ryan came in as I was finishing it up, and I just started hitting his arm. I'm like, it's this, I knew it. And just like, oh, it was so good. And I loved seeing it come together. So it was super fun. Performances were pretty good. There was one character, though, that, like, I think the writing just did him dirty, where, like, he knew a little too much, and that made me so suspicious of him early on. And everything felt a little off balance that way, whereas everyone else, it was more subtle. So, you know, and then, like, some dialogue was kind of clunky. So, you know, there's some kind of, like, you know, indie flaws a little bit. I think this might have been his first big feature. So
I was going to say, I believe this is the director's first feature film. So,
but for a first feature, like, it is, like, the premise is so fun. The story itself is very fun. That location was incredible. I thought they found just such a great spot. Visuals are so fun. Lighting was fun. So, like, there are so many really good elements. I just think, like, you know, dialogue, but, like, to be fair, I can't write dialogue, so it's hard to do, but, you know, it was great. And so I kind of want people to check this out. It's being released in select theaters this Friday as of us recording. So that's June 24th. And hopefully you'll stick around for a little bit and maybe get a wider release. I think it'll be on video on demand. It was June 28th.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, but check out my written review if you want to see more details on it. But it was good. I enjoyed it a lot.
Excellent. Yeah, no, it's always nice to have, you know, a promising movie from a brand new director that makes you want to see more of their work.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't know, maybe I might be a little biased towards it. Like, definitely sci-fi thriller. But I really liked 10 Cloverfield Lane, and I feel like it kind of has those elements. But I don't want to compare it too much because, like, it feels very unique, but that kind of vibe. So if you want to vibe with that sort of thing.
Is it kind of like a found footage type of vibe? Or
No.
Okay. I really liked 10 Cloverfield Lane. I mean, and Cloverfield obviously is more of the found footage one, but 10 Cloverfield Lane was great, very thrilling and scary.
Yeah. No, that's a good comparison to make. If you're being compared to 10 Cloverfield Lane, in my book, that's a positive thing. Yeah. That's a compliment.
Yeah, no, and I think it's good. Also, another point that I do think is really important, because this was the thing that made me concerned about watching it, is that, like, I have a hard time with indie films where I feel like there's no restraint. So I'm really nervous about what I'm going to see. So if you want to check out my parents' guide, I lay out in detail, like, a lot of things, but surprisingly little language. It's very scary in tone, but kind of like 10 Cloverfield Lane, where you're not seeing a lot, but you are really nervous. So just
and to me, that's a lot scarier. I think that
for
shows,
sure.
if you can pull that off, that is a more skillful, when you don't have any restraint, when you don't have any limitations, that just kind of, encourages people to do the easy stuff.
Yeah.
So good to know. Well, thanks for taking a look at that, Dani, and we'll be interested to see where that goes in the weeks to come. Yeah. In the meantime, we do have another release this weekend that I know this has not been my number one anticipated movie of the year or anything like that, but I have been kind of interested to see it for a couple of reasons. This is the biopic Elvis, about Elvis Presley. And
as seen in Josh's room.
I was going to say, like, I don't want to suggest too much of a preconceived, kind of bias here, because I've got my Velvet Elvis on the wall, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm like the world's biggest Elvis fan or anything like that. It's more kind of the goofy kitschiness of having a Velvet Elvis. But no, but I am a fan of his music, and I'm interested to see, I was interested to see what they did with his life. But the thing that made me especially interested in this is that this is from Baz Luhrmann, the director that you might be familiar with from Moulin Rouge, Romeo plus Juliet, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio from years ago. And I have to say, this is one of the more fascinating movies I've seen in some time. I can't necessarily say that it is one of the best movies that I have seen in some time, or certainly not say that it's one of the worst, but it's really kind of, in fact, it's been several days now since I saw it, and I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around it. I think that what this comes down to is that Baz Luhrmann, and like I said, if you've seen Moulin Rouge, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's very over the top, it's very stylish, it's very, very visually very engaging, lots of quick cuts, it's very, very dramatic, it's a spectacle, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously Elvis in his own way was a spectacle as a performer. And so I could see in one sense why it would make sense to match Baz Luhrmann to Elvis as a subject. But while I found the movie very entertaining and very engaging, as a biopic, even after 2.5 hours, because this is 2.5 hour plus movie, I didn't feel like I learned very much about Elvis. Certainly not that I didn't already kind of know. And so it almost seems like by applying Luhrmann's style to the subject, it made for spectacle, for entertainment, and for a lot of fun. But it did not give you the depth of analysis and of understanding the character that a more traditional biopic would have offered. And so that's why I say it's hard to say, well, it wasn't a bad movie. I would say that it's a good movie, but because it's a nonfiction subject, and because it's supposed to be a real life character, and because it's supposed to be a biopic, it also didn't really check that box. And so, and just, you know, because I was so baffled by this dynamic that, you know, I asked a couple of my other critic friends on the way out of the screening, and they basically said the same thing, which is that, you know, this movie is incredible to watch. I mean, it's absolutely worth seeing, but you don't learn, and it's not that there is no content. The problem is that because Luhrmann's style is so omnipresent and so over the top, that a lot of times you wind up questioning the reality of the content you're seeing. And so I know enough about Elvis to know about the different stages of his career and certain anecdotes about, you know, oh, the time he shot out his TV and stuff. But when you're seeing things on the screen that you are not familiar with, you don't really know, okay, so did this actually happen, or is this just kind of a dramatized for the sake of the movie type of thing? Because everything is played up in such a, like I said, you have to kind of, in fact, of all the Baz Luhrmann movies I've seen, Moulin Rouge, the style of Moulin Rouge is almost directly translated over, maybe muted a little bit, but it really feels like Elvis is kind of the heir apparent to that. Mark, what were you going to say?
Is it an unreliable narrator issue, or are you just saying it's his filmmaking style?
Yeah, that would make sense. Because I mean, as far as, you know, because we know this is the story.
Right.
Now, the story is essentially told from the perspective of his rather infamous, diabolical manager, Colonel Tom Parker. And that's the role that Tom Hanks plays, under a whole lot of kind of crazy makeup and with a crazy accent, because, you know, you hear Colonel Tom Parker and you think about like some cowboy from Texas, but he's actually, you know, one of the more nefarious elements of his character is that the suspicions are that he's not from the United States and he's here on some expired visa or something like that. And so he's kind of this shady character that, you know, he gets accused of manipulating Elvis's money and his various affairs, and is pulling the strings in the shadows and all this.
This is the movie. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So it's told fundamentally from the Parker character's perspective. And so that would certainly justify some of the decisions in terms of what was covered and what was not. But I wouldn't entirely justify that, if that makes sense. So it really effectively tries to cover his entire life. We have images of him as a youngster going to local churches and kind of having these very religious experiences, and then going and peeking in the cracks in the doors to see the local like blues juke joints and stuff. And so you see how he fuses, you know, roots, rhythm and blues with gospel, and kind of creates, you know, what eventually became, you know, his style of rock and roll, and kind of spins it off from there. And you see the rise of his early career and the controversy about, oh, he's shaking his hips on TV and all this kind of stuff. They make a big deal out of that. But then other passages of his career are brushed by really, really quickly. Like the years when he was in the Army, the years when he was making his movies in the early 1960s. For a 2.5-hour movie, you really feel like you're watching his career on fast forward. And the entire thing, like I said, it's very entertaining because it's a great spectacle. And there's some really, you know, fun moments and some really interesting performances. And of course, there's all kinds of music. But just as a biopic, like, and this is probably just because I've been watching the same thing at the same time, but I've been, you know, rewatching that OJ Made in America, the ESPN multi-part documentary series, which is like, you know, 180 degrees the opposite in terms of style, right? Because it's this slowed down documentary, but that documentary, as depressing as it is, it's so excellent in the way that it goes into so much depth to analyze and to kind of unpack the character of O.J. Simpson and all of the events that led up to and resulted from, you know, the murders. And so while watching that on my own and then going to see Elvis, I found myself coming out of Elvis thinking, man, I wish that somebody would do some kind of a documentary series like that, because I'm really interested to know more about this guy. I mean, he's this very, very incredible icon. you know, but this kind of feels like the carnival circus show performance version of that story that's really, really, really flashy, but not very deep.
This is, one of the hard things, I don't know if that would be Luhrmann's fault, really. I've noticed that biopics, it's really, really hard to decide what to leave in, what to include and what to leave out in a biopic, because you're given the assignment of a 2-hour movie and you're going to share someone's lifetime and somehow just figure out what you think is the most important thing and include it. And of course you're going to leave out something. And if you really want to do a biopic of an important, especially a musical biopic where you're going to show some of the songs that are, 5 minutes each, it probably needs to be a series. It needs to be just a TV series.
Well, and see, I wouldn't even just say that it's purely about the decision to leave out certain things or to include certain things. I think that one of the main problems is that by stylizing everything, what you are seeing doesn't seem as genuine. The style masks the content and distorts what you are seeing to a degree that it feels more like a show than a story.
This is why I think this is a descendant of Bohemian Rhapsody. There's a lot of music in that. There's lots of songs and snippets of songs, and they made $1 billion. People loved it. I loved it. So I think maybe that's part of it. I mean, I'm not saying that maybe Baz Luhrmann wouldn't have done that anyway, but there's a good chance that it's partly because of that.
And wasn't that so? I'm trying to. I'm straining back because I believe I'm trying to go back pre-COVID now.
Yes,
in my memory.
The world existed then.
Yeah, right. So wasn't one of the complaints about Bohemian Rhapsody that it wasn't as thorough in telling the story of Queen and was more focused on kind of the spectacle and because that sounds like what you're referring to, and if I can go back far enough to remember actually watching the movie 4 years ago, whatever it was.
I think I remember those criticisms.
What they did or what they tried to do is really just take a few key moments and just kind of make them big, like the making of the album, the Wembley concert. I mean, that's a big part of it. And I think you kind of have to do that. I mean, and I know we're talking about musical biopics right now, but even just biopics in general. For example, I like what Spielberg did with Lincoln, where it was just like, I'm not going to try to tell the story of Abraham Lincoln. We're just going to focus on these like sort of 3-month period in his life right before he died and tell it pretty thoroughly, like in a pretty detailed way. And it's still a 2.5-hour movie. In fact, Baz Luhrmann just said he has a 4-hour.
So many speeches.
Yes. Luhrmann has a 4-hour version of Elvis. He said.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah. And he had to cut it to 2.5. So maybe there's a chance someday you'll see a director's cut and it will answer all
my questions about the making of clam bake.
All the stuff that you wanted in there. Maybe it's in there. Maybe it's in that 4-hour version.
To be fair, it's not that I was identifying things and thinking, how come they skipped? I can't believe they skipped over this, right? Because they hit a lot of the highlights really well. I mean, in the way you describe the Wembley concert, the making of of the song Bohemian Rhapsody, like they do a great job. They spend a lot of time talking about the '68 comeback special. They talk about, there is a sequence that almost by itself made the film worthwhile for me, where because like I said early on, the big controversy is, well, the music is one thing, but the way this guy moves on stage is so sexual that it's just kind of, it's arousing people against their will. And it's, not to say there isn't something to that. I mean, it's pretty,
for its time. Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah. But in the midst of this, he goes to do a performance, and I want to say it was kind of a stadium, like an early stadium show. And so that the question is that is he going to tone things down to stay safe, or is he going to risk arrest? Because there was actually the idea that, well, you're going to be arrested if you're doing this. And they just do this sequence where he starts performing and he just kind of cuts loose, and he wants to be his like 100% Elvis. But what they do, and this is kind of the Baz Luhrmann thing, is they inject all of these freeze frames during the course of the song. and they have a still frame that has like this grainy black and white composition that are effectively the equivalent of old concert photos. And the photographer in me is just, oh man, those shots are incredible. I would love, because you can, they're taking it kind of like these close-up weird angles where you're almost just kind of off stage, kind of peeking in and through the curtains and stuff. And to a degree, I'm complaining about the style because I feel like it masks what we could get in terms of understanding Elvis's character. But at the same time, the style also delivers some really great moments and some entertaining content. And so I guess that's why the film just leaves you so puzzled, is that, because Mark, I think you're absolutely right. In fact, what you're describing in terms of needing to kind of focus in on particular things is exactly what I tell my English students when I talk about the difference between a memoir and an autobiography, right? An autobiography is just A to Z. Like, I was born here, I went to school here, my parents did this, then I went here and I got this job, and I met this person, I got married. And it's really just everything. And it's kind of dull, right? Whereas a memoir is going to focus in on maybe just a couple of events that are very poignant, that taught you a lesson. The one I'm thinking about that might be kind of the closest thing for a recent comparison is now I'm losing the movie about Princess Diana that Kristen Stewart was
Spencer. Oh, Spencer.
Right? The whole movie was just took place over the course of one weekend, like a short time before her death, right? So this is not an autobiography. And it's not a biopic in the sense that, okay, we're going to see everything that happened in her life. What we're going to do is we're going to see this particular event and see how that shaped who she was and how she was remembered and what was going on, right?
Yeah.
So no, that's the thing, is there are so many competing ideas that you're left with from this movie that, maybe that's means it's doing its job. Maybe Luhrmann is wanting me and my people to have this exact reaction. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
Well, actually. Oh, sorry. You can go.
No, go ahead, Dani. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm glad that that's the issue, and maybe this is just a personal preference thing, but like, I don't necessarily care for documentaries because, like, yeah, they're kind of boring, right? But like, it can still be done interestingly. But like, for me, when I'm seeing a biopic, I do like it when it's stylized, and like, I don't necessarily care if it's factual, because I mean, like, one of my favorite movies.
What is the truth anyway?
I was sorry.
No, because one of my favorite movies for a long time was like Braveheart. But the idea of Braveheart is more that it's a movie about a legend than a movie about an actual person.
Sure.
And they kind of poke fun at it, like, yeah. And that's what I kind of look for, is like, I don't care about the facts. Like, I want a good story, and so the movie that I was kind of thinking about with all of this was Beyond the Sea, the Bobby Darin biopic, where, it's a musical, right? And so it is totally fantasy, and there's a lot of, it's very performative, right? In that idea of a memoir where it's like, you're telling the story more or less, but you're telling a novel. You're telling something that's, you're wrapping things up nicely, so it works as if it was a fictional piece, but it is inspired by these true events. And I think it's really great, and I love the style of it. I think it's very fun. I felt like I did learn a couple things. Like, I didn't know anything about Bobby Darin, but like, I'm not going to feel super attached. Like, well, I'm, a Bobby Darin expert now. And, like, no.
You're not going to get a velvet Bobby Darin painting and stick it on the wall behind you?
I should go right there.
Please.
No, but like, it felt educational-ish, like, tangent educational. But the important part was the story and the themes. It's like, what do we want to take from this person's story? And what I'm guessing is from Elvis, like, we're hitting the highlights because, like, here's the overarching theme that's kind of a narrative sort of focus instead of a historical.
Well, and I think that's where it gets tricky, because in all of these cases, we're talking about real people.
True.
We're talking about real stories, real things that actually happened or did not happen. And I think what makes the difference is how it is being presented to us, because, you know, Hollywood and everybody loves to be able to put based on a true story, right? Because that adds a level of credibility and a level of you know, ethos and weight to it, right? Because, oh, well, this really happened. And so instead of just being some crazy thing that somebody invented, there's more depth to this. And so, because this is exactly the same kind of stuff that I tell my students when we're talking about memoirs, that like, look, this is not, you know, you have a contract and you have an obligation to your audience. When you tell them this is a true story, then you need to be honest. You need to be straightforward. You can't just play fast and loose with things when you're dealing with real life people. And I've had a couple of bad experiences with this as a movie critic, where I remember seeing, I don't know if you guys remember, a few years ago, there was Lee Daniels' The Butler. It was a story. It was,
oh yeah.
About the butler who served in the White House over several decades and served under, you know, various different presidents and stuff. And so the idea was, we're going to see the political intrigue of the White House for decades through this one character's eyes. It's a really interesting idea. And when I first saw the movie, I just kind of took it at face value and assumed, okay, well, this is a true story, right? Come to find afterwards that, oh, well, this was like inspired by a character who was in the White House. And a lot of these things are kind of not necessarily true. They're kind of creative, you know, narrative license. And given how pointed the film was in dealing with certain presidents versus other presidents, it really drove me batty just to think that, okay, well, so basically you're just kind of using this as an opportunity to kind of bang your own political drum here. But you're presenting it as if it's real. And so unless somebody looks behind the curtain or does a little research, they're just going to assume that, oh, wow, well, so-and-so was a total jerk. And, oh, but this guy was just awesome. And so I think
Cynic Dani, again, I don't believe anything created by anybody, because there's going to be some kind of agenda behind it.
And that's the result of it, right? Is that we don't trust what we see, even when it's presented as the truth and presented as factual. If somebody is giving us something and is trying to sell the idea that this is a true story and that this is based in reality, it's less that I want or don't want to be able to believe them, but I think that they should have enough integrity to present it in an honest and an objective and factual way. And if we've lost that to that degree, where kind of, Dan, as you say, that you just kind of go in and assuming that this is all going to be BS, because honestly, let's say,
well, not that it's all going to be BS, but it's just like this is made by someone,
right? But when we see the terms, you know, because you can always tell, it's like, okay, well, so based on a true story is really different than inspired by a true story. Because once they say inspired, you know, it's like, oh, this is bunk, right? But at least you can start to kind of read between the lines. And so I don't know. I
love the inspired by a true story, because I just like good stories. Like if it's a good story, like I don't know. Yeah, maybe I just don't care enough about.
Yeah, but what if they're portraying your grandpa in a really nasty way because he was a public figure? It's inspired by. I'm taking narrative license and I'm gonna make Uncle Joe look like this horrible person.
Uncle Joe Biden.
Uncle Joe. Like, oh, is that?
I'm gonna have to agree with Dani.
Did I tip my cards?
I'm gonna have to agree with Dani here. I think that, first of all, movies, let's just say it, like movies are different from books. Like I think we go to movies for feelings, we go to books for facts. Now that's a huge like oversimplification. I mean, that's a generalization, but like very much when they say based on a true story, I
disagree with you, counselor.
I never believe when it's based on a true story that we're just gonna see, like you say, a litany of facts, A to Z. Yeah. And they're not creating composite characters. They're not changing dialogue. They're not presenting events out of order. Generally, you hope that major things aren't being told incorrectly, you know, such as who killed Lincoln, you know, like, or whatever. Yeah. I'm always fascinated by this because one of my favorite movies, this used to be on my top 10 years ago, is a movie called JFK by Oliver Stone. Oh, and I loved Ebert's review of it because he said, I don't know. We don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. But this movie is a masterpiece because it reflects the mood of the time. It reflects the feelings of the people who just feel like there's not something quite right with the official story we've been told.
Because that's what we took away from the story.
And right. And that's how JFK is. It just throws in everything. It's just this hodgepodge of different theories and characters that you're not sure if they're central or not. And it's got like what looks like old time footage, kind of like how you were talking with some of the scene of that concert. I guess it's the 1960s. Yeah. And it's a really wonderful movie. And I don't know if it's even 10% true. You know what I mean? And I don't care. That's the thing is I'm not like, well, I'm trying to find out the truth of what really happened. It's like, no, it's really
because then you go to a book or you like look through, you'd go to other sources, I think, for that.
Right.
And it makes me think, like, Josh, I do think you need a documentary of Elvis, and I think that'll make you feel good because like you go to those sources for that kind of stuff, right?
And that's so, different. That's different.
Yeah, but that's not going to change my mind about feeling like people are playing too fast. What they present as true stories.
It's the difference between going to see Won't You Be My Neighbor and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. You're going into them for different reasons. One is like that emotional kind of experience, and one's the factual experience.
But you still have the emotional experience in a documentary too. Like some documentaries are amazingly.
You also have a lot of agenda pushing in documentaries.
Yes, it's true. Michael Moore has something to say about that.
No, right.
But that's why I'm saying I like the narrative thing where it's like I'm already going in, not going to buy everything, but it's like I'm going to take from this what I want. Whereas a documentary, it's kind of like you're being forced it.
Like I completely see and agree with a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think in the same way that we as critics look at things a different way and understand things a different way from the audience, I think this is the same thing too, because I don't know that the general audience is always going in with the understanding that, well, they're saying this is a true story, but it's not. And I completely agree that in adapting real life into, a 90-minute to 200-minute narrative, that you're going to have to create, dramatic license, right? You're going to have to create conversations that you don't have word for word. Mm-hmm. But what bothers me is that I do think that that's exploited too far in certain cases. Not in most. I mean, I don't find myself frustrated by this all the time, but examples like The Butler have made me just kind of very unsatisfied with the idea that, real people are being, in fact, because I want to say that, was it Ronald Reagan's son was really just irate after The Butler to see how his father was portrayed, and just said, this is, you have portrayed him as only being sympathetic to certain people when it was politically convenient, that he didn't have any of these sincere feelings. And so I agree with you guys, what you guys are saying. I think that in terms of artistic license, obviously there has to be a certain degree of it. But I do think that in certain cases, filmmakers have abused that to the point where it's become irresponsible. So
and I think we're getting a little far afield from Josh's original criticism of Elvis, right? Because you weren't saying that, there's just a bunch of false facts presented in this movie. You're just saying, hey, I didn't really learn that much. Yeah. Like it was great. Stylistically, it had some songs. Yeah. Right. But it just felt maybe a little bit empty. It was stylistically cool, but substantively it was lacking, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And so that's a different conversation, I think, than, well, this movie just completely almost defamed somebody. Yeah. Like it was a slander.
Yeah.
I heard the same criticism of, for example, A Beautiful Mind. And usually this happens with like really good movies that are like going to win Oscars.
I was so disappointed by Beautiful Mind.
Well, then the criticisms come out because, like, for example, his wife, they whitewash her, right? She's just a white woman, and in the she's really Argentine, I believe. Alicia was John Nash's wife. That's just an example of some of the criticisms I remember reading of it. And even I just thought, I don't really care. I mean, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but it was like it didn't change the quality of the movie for me or the emotional experience.
It didn't seem like it was integral, right?
Right, to the story. But it was something that upset a few people. Green Book a few years ago, another Best Picture winner, upset
that one got a lot
people.
of hate.
Got a lot of heat. I didn't have a problem with it, even though even if I believe what the relatives or the descendants of Don Shirley, were saying about the portrayal of the relationship between the two, I felt like it was fine. I mean, again, I didn't go to it for facts.
Right. Well, there were certain criticisms of that film that, and again, if it was a matter of things like facts that were being distorted and treated irresponsibly, then I'd have a problem with that. Other criticisms of the film, I did not share at all. But no, you mentioned Beautiful Mind. I just have to say that I went into Beautiful Mind with no idea of what the twist was. And I don't know if this is, I mean, how long has this movie been out?
2001.
But I went into that, having seen the trailer and thinking this is going to be like some cool CIA thriller, like intense, cloak and dagger type thing. And when the switch got flipped halfway through, I felt so robbed. What is this? This stinks.
I really liked it.
I'll
go on record. I liked A Beautiful Mind.
Oh yeah, no, it was. In retrospect, I liked it because it was still a good movie. But I remember feeling so robbed at the time because I
was
thought it was supposed
for the
to be
thriller night.
I thought this was going to be some, So
that should have been
supposed to be Mission Impossible.
That should have been Crow's Oscar moment. I think if he hadn't won the year before for Gladiator, I think he would have got it for Beautiful Mind.
I could see that. Well, I am curious because Mark was kind of bringing it back to Elvis. What is your final verdict on it then, Josh? Because you feel like, I wanted a little more from this. So let's say you can have
I
your
almost want to give it
documentary.
2 ratings. I almost want to give it like 2 ratings where I would say just as an entertaining movie that is fun and engaging and worth a couple hours of your time, I'd give it like 3.5 stars. I really would.
Oh, wow.
But as a biopic, I'd have a hard time getting past 3 because you just don't learn, and granted, I mean, I probably know more about him than most people. And so, like the story of the 68 comeback special and stuff like that is going to be new to a lot of people who see the movie. But I just didn't feel like I felt like depth was being sacrificed for style. And so if you're okay with the trade-off, then I don't think you'll be disappointed. And I don't necessarily think the Elvis fans, like the real diehard people, I mean, I've never been to Graceland, so people who've been to Graceland, I think that they will still enjoy the movie. And I didn't really sense anything that, again, maybe this is just because I'm not as big of a fan, but I didn't notice anything that felt like it was being disingenuous or was distorting, the understood truth, behind all of it. But that the dynamic of seeing exchanges and anecdotal events that are so stylized that you don't know, is this being presented as like a metaphor or as some kind of a surreal, interpretation or kind of summary of what's something that's going on, or did this actually happen? Right. But I mean, one omission that was kind of unfortunate is they didn't show him going to the White House to meet Nixon, which was, I mean, they did make a movie out of that alone. So I guess,
we'll just have to keep tweeting about the 4-hour cut. Then we'll get it.
Yeah. So how does
like
that
the Snyder cut?
I was going to say, we'll get we want the Luhrmann cut.
We want the Luhrmann cut.
This might be, I mean, in terms of musical biopics, I don't know if it's too soon for you to rank, but how does it compare to like Walk the Line, Ray, Bohemian Rhapsody, Love and Mercy, The Doors? Rank those in order right now, immediately, 1 through 7. Just kidding.
Well, I think the first thing that I would say, and that all of the ones that you have mentioned that I've seen, I did like. But the one that resonated the most was Love and Mercy. Like that was a movie that really stuck with me. Yeah,
that one's so good.
Just my knee-jerk reaction based on the ones that you mentioned, I would put Love and Mercy first, and everything else would just kind of be You know, because what did you say? You said Ray. You said Walk the Line. I haven't seen The Doors. That's one I haven't seen.
Oh, okay. Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody. I saw. What else was there? Now the Get On Up, the James Brown one
I
from
haven't
a few
seen
years
that
ago.
one.
That was good, and that had more of a style to it. Like it was a little more style heavy, but it was specifically to replicate James Brown's stage style, like the very dynamic, horn heavy, quick shots, quick cuts. Like that felt like an intentional decision that was meant to reflect the subject, where with Baz Luhrmann, I kind of felt like it's Baz Luhrmann putting his style on Elvis.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, if you haven't seen Get On Up, I would recommend it. I'll have to see that. That was a good one. Oh my goodness. I mean, there got to be. I'm sure that there are others that we're not even.
Well, there's Amadeus, but that might be going back a few hundred years.
Well,
the OG.
Too long. Hey, Amadeus was a great movie. I remember liking that one quite a bit.
I love it. That's my favorite. But I mean, I'm trying to think of modern biopics from like
for sure
50s on or something. But yeah.
Like I said, that my hesitation with it isn't necessarily in that it is an inaccurate or a bad biopic, just that it's kind of a shallow biopic.
It's just you're boring and you want boring information. That's fine.
Just
be honest.
So heartless.
Mean.
I'm sorry. I haven't even seen Elvis. I can't say anything.
Is this because when I turned the time over to you in that last episode, I checked my phone and it looked like I wasn't paying attention to what you were saying? Because I'm rewatching that episode, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I look so bad because like, Dani, why don't you talk about this for a second? And then I immediately go over and start looking at my phone.
Well, we're so used to not being seen.
I know.
Where it's like all the bad habits and like my weird
I really am listening to you guys. And I'm kind of, I'm always kind of like drifting back and forth. So.
Oh yeah. No, I had to get a chair that like wasn't gonna rotate because oh my god.
I mean, I'm thinking of the audience. I got Richard Simmons here now with me. I got him in the background, so maybe I should put him in the chair and have him.
Are you holding Richard Simmons hostage?
No, I am not.
Oh, good. Okay.
No, that's just. Well, you remember that because I had this at the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I remember.
Why?
So it was passed on to me as kind of like this weird heirloom thing that like I had like a half dozen different people from my high school had it in sequence, and then my buddy Brett gave it to me. It's got legs too, like it's in two parts. Like it's actually like a life-size cardboard cutout, and it's got it has the names of the previous owners on the back, and I just thought it was just too hilarious, and so I just started kind of carting it around. And
aren't you supposed to pass it off though? Like, is it like a?
When I find somebody who's worthy to inherit the life-size cardboard cutout of Richard Simmons, then I'll consider it. But no, I have actually had at least one person, like somebody saw a photo that I had posted of it, and they contacted me through Facebook offering to buy it, and of course I said no.
No, he's priceless.
Didn't even negotiate.
What was the offer?
I'm trying to, I'd have to. Gosh, I don't know how long it would take me to look up. I might be able to dig it up. That might be able to report back on that with the next.
Yeah. Stay tuned for next time.
So after you guys see Elvis and can kind of chime in with your thoughts, and I will come back and I will report on how much the offer for the Richard Simmons cardboard cutout was.
That sounds like a fair trade.
And we can.
No, just wait. Like, I'm going to go see Elvis. Like, man, this is garbage biopic. So stupid. Don't understand
Directors
the hype.
are totally responsible. They're irresponsible. They need to tell the truth. You guys are going to completely flip all of your. Josh, you were right. You're right about everything. What was I thinking?
Well, so this is in theaters now, right, Elvis?
Probably by the time we have this posted, yes, because it'll be this weekend. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder how well that will do. Sometimes these movies just kill it, and other times they die. These biopics, and so
it
given
looks
the
beautiful. I think that'll bring a lot of people in.
No, my biggest concern with that question would be that it's going up against Maverick and Lightyear,
Jurassic World,
and Dominion, and we got Thor in a couple weeks. So I would be, because in a lot of ways you kind of think that this would be the kind of movie that would come out in December, and because they want to put Tom Hanks up for an acting award, or we've spent this whole time, and I haven't even mentioned Austin Butler plays Elvis. Does a pretty good job. I'm not mind-blowing or anything like that. Olivia DeJonge, who you probably recognize from, do you guys remember The Visit?
Yes.
Yeah. The one.
Oh, was that the M. Night Shyamalan?
I didn't see it, but I know things about it. Yeah.
So she was the older sibling, the grandchild, the older grandchild.
Wink, wink.
So this is several years ago because she plays Priscilla Presley.
Okay.
And then, well, that's funny. I didn't even realize David Wenham was in it. Son of a gun. Speaking of Stranger Things, we were talking about Stranger Things a while ago. How do you pronounce his name? The kid who played Billy, who was the older brother. It's a Dacre, Montgomery. Is it Dacre? Dak?
I don't know how you pronounce
it. Good old Dak.
Yeah, well, he was there. And, of course, Tom Hanks. But everybody will recognize Mr. Hanks. So, yeah. No, I don't know. I really would be interested. And I would recommend people see it. I think people will enjoy it. It's just you're going to kind of come away thinking, well, that was really entertaining, but I just don't know that I really learned much about Elvis. And like I said, it's 2.5 hours long, so it doesn't feel long. Yeah.
Is it because of there's like a lot of music that kind of? There's a lot of content to cover.
Yes,
of course.
there is, but it doesn't feel like. This is the first one to spring to mind. The first Sing movie, the animated one from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I remember what drove me nuts about that movie was how during the third act, when they had like their big final performance, every character had to sing their own song in its entirety. And I just thought, you aren't seriously going to play like 6 songs in a row, right? And it was something like that. Elvis is not like that. There's lots of music. There's lots of performing. But most of the time it's not like a full song or, huge, long, lengthy. It doesn't ever drag.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, I would really be interested to see what you guys thought of this one.
Okay.
Because I think even if you didn't like it, I think you would still be very interested by it and would have thoughts. That would be thoughts. It's not the kind of movie that you would just kind of see and then shrug your shoulders and okay, on to the next thing. It leaves you with an impression. So
fair.
Yeah, cool. How about that?
Looking forward to it.
That's right.
I'm not looking forward to like the my moment of humility coming back, acknowledging you were right or something.
Oh, has to happen. I have to be right at some point, right? Somewhere down the line. So I don't know, guys. So are we going to talk about Kenobi next time? Because we'll have the last episode will come out this week. So we're going to jump into that one next episode, you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Give a little sneak preview. Yeah. Because I've got lots of thoughts there, and we've already kind of hinted at some of our thoughts, and so maybe the next episode we'll knock that one out. But cool. Any other final thoughts, promotions, anything going on in your guys' life that you want the people to know about? Give the people what they want.
Just the baby coming up. My wife's having a baby.
That's right.
On the 26th is the date. So we're so probably awesome. The next time I'll be on a podcast, we'll have a new little baby girl. So we're excited about that.
That is great.
Yeah.
Hope that works out well. Looking forward to it. Maybe even a little cameo now that we've gone to video.
Oh yeah, that would be a good idea.
Oh yeah.
None of my boys have been on this. I should bring her first when she comes. That'd be fun.
Is she the first girl?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So of course she has to be like the first. She's a princess, you know.
Yeah.
Nice.
Gotta spoil her.
How about you, Dani? What's going on?
Not much.
I mean, you got your review of Cryo up, so they can go and get a little bit more in depth on that.
Yeah, definitely check out the written review and see if this is one that you'd be interested in. And I'd strongly recommend it at the very least, just to, of course, support local filmmakers, but also it's a good one.
I was going to say, like, it doesn't sound like it's just it's a local filmmaker, so let's go support him. It sounds like, no, this is a good movie. This is worth your time. So that's, no problem supporting that. No. Great. Well, thanks, guys. So before we go, just a reminder to, leave us some comments, leave us some input wherever you're watching this, whether you're watching on YouTube for the video or if you're listening to it on Spotify or on iTunes. Leave us a review. Give us some positive feedback. Leave us a review. It's going to be positive. It's going to be negative, then, I'm sure you got other things to do with your day. But other than that, we will look forward to getting back with you in a little while and talking Kenobi and whatever else just seems to be important at the time. So until then, be safe and have a good one.
Yeah.